On the hard stuff already. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start, Pat's going to be late. We knew about that. We don't know where Councillor Ditter's wandered off to, but he is around. Anyway, welcome to today's meeting. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceeding. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making audio recording, and providing commentary on the proceedings. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guild. Members and other speakers are reminded to use the microphone when speaking. Thank you. Appointments and substitutes.
There are no substitutes today, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. On. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Go on a bit. Page 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. Thank you for that. Sign them. Right. Conservation Advisory Panel, agenda item 4. Any issues to be raised? Happy to receive them. Thank you. Public participation.
There's no public participation, Chair.
We have public representation, but unfortunately, the one of the members who wishes to speak, or members of the public, has been delayed. So we're going to reschedule that item, going straight to Citation House, item 7. We'll come back to 9. There, the public appears. Hey. Sorry. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone. So this is agenda item 7, which is 21-00701/REM, and the similar application, which relates to a variation condition due to the listed building consent, which is 21/00697, which is agenda item 8 on page 39. The two applications are identical in terms of the plans and information submitted. So this is it requires 2 decisions, one relating to the planning permission and one relating to the listed building consent. So if we just deal with item 7 and the photos and the presentation. So the application is an amendment to a previous application. Members may recall back in 2018, which included an extension and improvements to conversion to entirely residential. The applicant has now amended the scheme and considered actually that the first 2 floors they want to keep as commercial, and therefore exclude the extension, which included an additional floor top of the scheme. So what you can see on your screen at the moment is the red line of the application, just opposite the Museum and Art Gallery. Slide, please. This is the view from Broadgate Street. Slide, please. Again, another photo. You can see some of the detailing and white building. Relatively attractive building in the street scene. Fits in well. Keep going through the slides, please. Can you go back one side? You can just see behind there the rear extensions and the rear building, the modern extensions background. Keep going through the sides. This is the rear of the building. See again the extensions. Neighbouring building to the right. So this is the rear elevation. Slide, please. Again, views of the rear elevations and extensions already been built. Slide, please. So these are the floor plans of the ground floor. These show now, rather than, as I say, residential, these show commercial use. It's a meeting space for, as I understand it, for small businesses and to use for meeting space and virtual meetings, and so they don't have to provide those facilities elsewhere. Right, just go back again. So you can see the bins and the cycle stores on the southern elevation. Again, the first floor, similar kind of layouts, similar extensions, similar conversion. Next slide, please. This is the first of 2 floors of residential that is now being proposed, with the residential units being first 8 flats. This floor. Finally, on the top floor, side. Again, you can see there, again, a mix of 1, 2, and 1 studio apartment, apartment 12. You can see as well, there's a variety of roof terraces and outdoor space for some of the properties, and this is how I'm proposing to create an appropriate residential environment. I think it's one more slide, or is that roof? That's the roof plan, councillors. And goes into a similar presentation. Building application. So the recommendation, councillors, are set out that, subject to the section 106, that planning permission be granted for the variation of the plans, and that the scheme is considered acceptable, subject to the completion of the section 106, which is in appendix 1 of agenda item 7, and I believe that's be page 37, where we set out the heads of terms, and the recommendation is, as set out, is for subject to grant planning permission in accordance with all the conditions set out on pages 31, 32, and 33, and indeed page 34, councillor, 35, and also listed building consents. Again, those are set. The conditions relate to just the listed building alterations. Those are set out on pages 47 and 48. We have sought an extension of time to complete the section 106. But other than that, no further comments, councillor, other than the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions? Jenny.
Thanks, Chair. So we're going down from 38 flats to 13. The original flats, how many of them were meant to be affordable?
There was a viability exercise as part of the last application, council, which meant none were viable in terms of that section 106. So the original planning permission did not grant any affordable housing.
Thank you. So are any of the new flats going to be affordable?
Again, because this is a conversion of a listed building, the vacant building credit is applied, and that in effect wipes out the affordable capability of seeking affordable housing.
And how many of them are disabled friendly that you can access? Because obviously there are none at ground floor level now.
Correct. My understanding is they're all on a level access. I couldn't tell you exactly in terms of whether they meet the M43 criteria, which would be related to building regulations standards in terms of disabled access and accessible housing. But again, there is no reason to suggest that they can't be accessed by disabled people.
Thank you. So we're looking for losing more than half the accommodation. Why would we want to do that?
It's a change, councillor, in terms of the layouts. What we are getting in terms of the ground floor and the first floor is the economic benefit of the commercial floor space, which will add vitality and viability for small and medium business enterprises. And in addition to that, the upper floors then also become residential, which will then again add support to providing residents. So it's continuing the use, so to speak, or converting the use from the previous use into offices, but as I say, accommodating those on the first floor. Sorry, second floor and third floor.
Jenny? Hodges.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the comments from regulatory services. I'm just a little bit concerned about the noise from commercial buildings, commercial use below 2 floors of accommodation. Are we sure that noise prevention measures have been taken so that there won't be any problems for the occupiers of these units from the commercial use underneath?
Thank you, councillor, and for you, Chair. I'm certain that the planning conditions added and the comments of regulatory services, it's not an unusual situation to have residential above commercial, certainly in city centre locations. Satisfied that we can address those comments. The satisfactory residential environment can be accommodated.
Thank you for that. Can I just ask then, are there limits on the use of the 2 office floors? Because if I'm a resident above, I'd be more concerned about noise going up.
Again, there are no restrictions currently in place, and therefore we haven't sort of picked out opening hours. But obviously, that is because it's an established use, so we haven't sort of. We're satisfied that obviously as well you can put in membranes or sound insulation that would address concerns between upward movement, sideway movements.
Councillor Amos.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is just a sort of city centre development, and by city centre I mean proper city centre development, that we should be supporting. It seems to me that more of this beautiful building will be left intact than the previous application, and more of it will be in general use rather than divided up into little apartments. I think the other good thing about this is actually providing space for employment use. I've always been concerned that, you know, it's very nice that people want to come and live here, but it'd be nice if they had some jobs to go to as well. So the fact that we're providing employment is very, very significant. You know, the city centre obviously is going to change over the years, but we don't want it to be without jobs and without employment provision. So that's the other reason I support it. And obviously Karen Hanchett will tell us there's plenty of room for parking in the area, so there won't be any problem there. So all in all, Mr. Chairman, I think this is an improvement, funnily enough, on the previous application. I'm happy with it. And could I just confirm in terms of the listing of the building, because it is an incredibly beautiful building, that we will actually keep an eye on what they're doing internally. I know they can't alter the external aspect, which is absolutely very beautiful. It's just a reassurance that we will keep an eye on what they're doing inside.
Yes, Councillor, those works are specifically detailed within the application. So yes, we will keep an eye on it. It's not a million miles away from the office, so I imagine the site visit wouldn't take too long, if you pardon the flippancy. And our new enforcement colleague is also in the public audience, so I'm sure he's making a note.
Any more questions, councillors?
Would you like me to move it or not? Oh.
I won't repeat what Alan has said, but just to make the point that this will mean this continues to be a living building rather than something just a cadaver. And so I fully support the application.
Moved by councillor Amos, seconded by Andy.
Thank you, Chair. If I take item 7 first, the vote for that one. That one is the according to the recommendation to grant planning permission subject to a section 106 agreement, the conditions and the grant of a statutory listed building consent. All those in favour? And those against? And any abstention? Agenda item 8, which is the listed building consent for the same development, that's subject to the condition. All those in favour? 9, and those against? None, and abstentions? Both carried, thank you.
Hopefully this is one of the speakers and we can move on to the item we want to discuss. Right, so we can move on to item 9, which is Court Mews. We'll ask for the officer to do his presentation and then we'll call the objector and the applicant. 5 minutes. Ali.
Thank you. The application reference 21 is for the change of use of the building from a 48 student to be generous to a 46 bed. Sorry. The supporting staff office accommodation. I'd like to draw members' attention to the following verbal update. It relates to the comment from Worcester City Council, Economic Development and Regeneration. The comment was meant to include a paragraph from housing, but has only become apparent yesterday and therefore too late to be included as a late paper for members. It reads as follows. Although the shortage of accommodation for homeless persons is acknowledged, the supply of homeless accommodation to this degree significantly risks oversupply. Furthermore, although the application cites accommodation for homeless persons, there is now a well-established pathway for rough sleepers and those who are new to rough sleeping to a variety of existing support services and accommodation providers within the city who are working closely with the City Council. This application lacks detail around the intended cohort and the final risk to raise around the number of one-bed units provided within a single complex, whereas the direction of travel for our council is the provision of a wide range of accommodation types to meet a variety of needs. The agent has responded this morning with the following statement, which I will read out for you. There is not a well-established route for rough sleepers within the city. People are only entitled to help if they are not deemed intentionally homeless or have priority need. Any other persons presenting as homeless and not deemed to have a duty from the council are referred to places such as ourselves, St Paul's Hospital, CCP, etc., for external, private, non-temporary accommodation. The intended client are not rough sleepers. Rough sleepers tend to have a high level of complex support needs. Lotus houses people with low to medium support needs who may be classed as homeless, but this does not mean they are rough sleeping. The vast majority of people who are homeless are not rough sleepers. They're classed as the hidden homeless. These people are sofa surfing, living in domestic abuse situations, living in cramped one-bedroom B&B accommodation with their young children. The intended cohort for the building would be two of the flats for single women, 2 for single males, and 2 for mothers and small children, not rough sleepers. Not a permanent accommodation. For up to 2 years, whilst we work with clients to be able to maintain a tenancy of their own, we operate on an excluded license agreement basis, which affords us the ability to evict a client immediately if needed, should there be any issues with their conduct whilst accommodated with us. Now to the presentation, please. This is a site location plan with the site outlined in red. So please. This is a closer version. You can see the relationship with the railway line and the arches beneath. The proposed footpath to link the railway station and the riverside would run east to west parallel with the railway line. Sorry, if we can just go back to that. East is the rear of a commercial business unit which fronts Foregate Street. To the south is the White House car park. To the west is Farrier Street with the University Jenny Lind building entrance on the corner. And opposite, but beneath the arches, is a coffee shop, pizza shop, microbrewery, burger and noodle shop in this section. This slide is the existing ground floor layout. You can see the floor layout is replicated across the 6 units, which have shared entrances to serve 2 units. Facing south is the courtyard gardens and the front doors face the railway arches. Each unit is the existing ground floor. Each unit has 2 bedrooms on the ground floor and a kitchen living area which has access to the external amenity space. Here's the first floor. Each unit has 4 bedrooms on this floor, all en suite. So please. Here's first floor layout, the layout for which would not change. And this is the roof area, which has 2 ensuite bedrooms. Natural light is gained through roof lights. I've generated this slide to clearly show the layout of each floor and the internal arrangement. This shows the proposed ground floor plan with the inclusion of the ground floor offices, 2 of the existing bedrooms for staff on site to use. These are coloured in yellow. Next slide, please. Here are some photographs of the site. This is the end gable facing onto Farrier Street. This shows the front elevation and the existing relationship with the arches and the area in front of the building. This is the view between the building and the arches. It will lead to the area where the removed building will provide pedestrian access to Foregate Street. This is the area to the rear of the building. The southern boundary is adjacent to the car park with White House Hotel. Bike storage area is proposed in this area, but there are issues in terms of access and suitability for cycle storage in the constrained area. And a view of the rear elevation from within the car park. Roof lights relate to the bedrooms in the roof area. The scheme has been carefully assessed and the balance of consideration falls that the site is constrained and it fails to adequately meet the needs of the proposed residents for whom the amenity levels would be compromised by the constrained nature of the site, which would worsen with greater pedestrian traffic in the area. As such, your officers recommend refusal, and following assessment of the issues, the reason for refusal is given in section.
Thank you for that, Sally. So we firstly have the objector, Tony Kelly. Good afternoon. Before you start, we've got 5 minutes. George here will look after.
Okay, thank you. Well, the general thrust of the objection is mainly focused around the area is already an established student hub, which forms or has actually developed into quite a vibrant area. It is relatively safe at the moment, and we're actually in favour of additional student accommodation being added to the area. Sorry, I actually speak on behalf of Farrier and Virginia Houses, which obviously is already student accommodation. The more development we have of student accommodation in that area will enhance the vibrant life that is there already and support the local businesses in the immediate area and the town centre. As you'll be aware, there has been a fair amount of investment by local businesses. There's been a long haul from the White House Hotel in order to encourage tourism and both local and international. The whole regeneration plan kind of is in keeping with the upliftment of the entire area. And we just don't see this development being put slap bang in the middle of that area as being part of the regeneration plan or enhancing local facilities or businesses in any way whatsoever. Having said that, we do believe that it's important that we continue to address the homeless issue. But looking at other areas, Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, the greatest success in reintegrating homeless people into mainstream communities is by having smaller hubs where they can gain the empathy of the local communities and the support. We feel that is a much better and more in keeping with the overall plan for the area than having a high density of homeless people in the area. One of our other main concerns is that by providing a quality accommodation for the students, it also has a spin-off in terms of helping the university for them to grow and for them to increase their offering. Overall, it's a great idea, but it's in the wrong location. And we just don't see how it would work. The whole plan, as I've understood it, has been in some ways misleading. It's been confused. And the actual management plan, the 2-page management plan, is scant at best. It refers in no way to security other than security provision would be provided. To what degree, we're not sure. We personally are very conscious that the students are in a safe environment and their welfare is our main concern. It's also the concern of their parents, especially for the first time, or the first year students who are perhaps away from home for the first time. It's incredibly important to the parents that they feel that they're in a safe environment. And having the potential for a high density of homeless people across the road, it doesn't bode well for the future. I think that's about it. I was asked to mention the White House Hotel in particular. They have already an existing ongoing issue with homeless people, as we have had at Farrier House, and on 1 or 2 occasions I've been in contact with St. Paul's and helped the, right, okay, sorry.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Could you explain more why you've had problems with homeless people recently in the past? Where from?
Sorry, we're not actually sure where they've actually come from, but we have found homeless people around the back of the property. We have an outcrop on the first floor, and they sleep there sometimes to avoid adverse weather. We have our own security company who do nightly patrols, and they've had to move them on several occasions. And on 2 occasions, I've actually been in contact with, I think it's Emma from St. Paul's, and they've actually been and collected the belongings that they've left and taken them off down to St. Paul's. We've also had an occasion to phone the police, whereby stolen property, which was still labelled and sealed, was hidden on our properties. We've handed that over to the police, and in fact, later the following day, I actually apprehended the person who came back to collect it, and he was then arrested.
Question? Objector? Very much.
Thank you.
We now have Melanie Green, who's the agent for the applicant.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to speak and to respond to both the conclusions of your planning officer and also the comments from the previous speaker. My name is Melanie Green, and I'm the Regional Service Manager covering the south of the country for Lotus Sanctuary. I know Worcester very well. I've lived here my whole life, and I've worked in Worcester in the homeless services and the housing services for over 10 years. Lotus Sanctuary is very committed to the pure and simple intention of housing and empowering vulnerable people suffering from a range of issues. Lotus was established in 2018, having identified a worrying gap in the existing provision for safe and secure housing for vulnerable people in the Midlands. We work closely with local councils. We are referred to almost daily by our own Worcester Council homeless team, and referral partners such as domestic abuse services, social prescribers, social services, probation, to name a few. We provide a safe and stable base foundation for our clients to be able to rebuild their life and to have the necessary support to move on with their lives. We firmly believe that everyone deserves to have a safe home, and without this long-term sustainable change, it's extremely hard to implement.
I refer you to Maslow's needs. You need a house before you can do anything else with your life. You need safety. You will no doubt be aware of our existing facility at Pierpoint House, where we have had no issues whatsoever, no complaints whatsoever from emergency services, councils, neighbouring businesses, or the residents whatsoever, and the service is identical other than the size. Turning to the proposals at Court Mews, it's a building with an already established and managed residential use. It is able to be lawfully reoccupied by students at any time. However, it's evident there is no longer a need for this level of student accommodation within the city. We're looking to bring the property back into a productive and much needed use, which will support the wider community. The accommodation would be managed by Lotus Sanctuary in the same way as Pierpoint House. We have taken on board the comments provided by West Mercia Police and set out in detail as part of our application how the accommodation will be managed. And we are happy for this to be subject to a planning condition as set out in the officer's report. We are happy to keep the security in place if that is needed for the planning. We therefore cannot see any reason why the proposals will not comply with the South Worcester Development Plan on design. The officer's report comments upon the provision of amenity space and overlooking. These are unchanged to the current use of the building, and therefore there's no validity to these comments. Notwithstanding this, the service at Pierpoint House is also at street level. It also has limited amenities and parking facilities. This is also proven to not be an issue so far, so there's no validity to these comments. Turning to the overall principle of the proposals, it's important for it to be recognised in the determination of this application and as set out in the officer's report that there has actually been no objection from planning policy. In fact, the proposals clearly meet the requirements of SWDP 14 market housing mix in being a wholly suitable location for housing of homeless and supported accommodation. It's important to note that the master plan referred to in your officer's report is not actually a formal planning document. It doesn't even exist in a draft form and therefore can be afforded no weight in the determination of this planning application. The planning officer and the previous speaker have made an automatic and incorrect assumption that a homeless refuge in this location would generate antisocial behaviour. This is not only hugely concerning when it is the role of the planning officer to be objective, but also goes in the face of the good work that we at Lotus are already doing at Pierpoint House and nationally. City centres are inevitably home to a diverse range of uses and residents. This is at the very heart of planning policy at national and local level, and provided premises are managed appropriately, which will be intended and implemented at Court Mews, there is no reason that the homeless cannot operate alongside other residential accommodation and commercial uses. And may I add, by homeless, I mean the hidden homeless, and we are not talking about rough sleepers. I must be very clear on that. As I hope is evidence, myself and all at Lotus are extremely passionate and experienced in creating safe and well-managed accommodation for those in need of it. And we can all appreciate there is a dire need of this at the moment in the country as a whole. Our team, which includes experienced property professionals, have sought to work in positive and proactive manner with your officers, but fortunately this has not been reciprocated. We're sadly having the automatic assumption that the residents of our accommodation will be a nuisance. As a result, the officer's report is an unfair representation of our proposals and their important contribution to the needs of Worcester. There's no robust planning policy basis for refusal of the application, and such I urge you to challenge the officer's recommendation today and support us in delivering desperately needed high specification of accommodation for those in need in the city. And I am more than happy to answer any questions which you may have on the proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Questions, councillors? Councillor Amos?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just clarify exactly what you're saying? Are you saying there will be no problems as has been described? Because certainly my experience is that on balance, there's more likely to be problems than to have no problems.
Sorry. As with any accommodation, I can't promise there will be not a single problem. You could house generic people and there would still be police call-outs, etc. What I'm saying is that the intended use isn't how it has been implied, is that we will be housing rough sleepers who come with a vast range of high complex needs. We house low to medium needs clients. So we do screen people for a level of risk, and people who are deemed to be too high risk for our accommodation are not accommodated by ourselves. So I can't promise that there wouldn't be particular issues or any issues whatsoever. Who could promise that? But what I can say is that we do take massive risk assessments. Our clients go through a huge referral and assessment process before they are accommodated with us. We have a strict criteria of what we absolutely will not accept, and I'm happy to go through that if you'd like me to. And what we do is have an excluded licence. So if there was any issue of antisocial behaviour, if there are any issues of violence, drugs, anything like that, which I am assuming, which is what people's objection is, we would evict those people with immediate effect if needed. So these people wouldn't be there on assured short hold tenancies where you're there for 6 months at least. They would be there on excluded licenses where we have the legal and lawful power to stop them from living in that accommodation on the spot if we need to and we deem it necessary. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So what ongoing security arrangements would you have in place then?
So the proposal for the management of the property is that there will be 5 full-time members of support staff plus a team leader and a senior support worker. These will operate between the hours of 8 AM and 10 PM. And then outside of these hours, there would be static security, either 1 or 2 security guards, whichever is deemed as necessary, and on a risk assessment would be in place. And we are happy to provide that as part of the conditions ongoing.
Just so I'm clear, so are you saying this facility is going to be staffed 24 hours a day or not?
Yes, it will be staffed 24 hours a day with support staff from 8 AM to 10 PM and then security on site of an evening.
Hodges?
Thank you. You said right at the beginning of your presentation that there was less need for student accommodation in the city. And so I assume from that you feel that you're taking over some of the unnecessary student accommodation. Is that accommodation not being used by students at the moment then?
It is currently being used as student accommodation. It's a 48-bed unit and there's currently only 8 students living in it because there was no need for them for a space of that size, and there's only 8 people. So there's currently 40 bedrooms being completely wasted in the city centre that could accommodate people in need.
Can I ask another question? And from the presentation, it was talked about units with 6 bedrooms in. They would be 2 single male, 2 single female, and then 2 for families. I just question the advisability of putting single men, single women and families in what is very close living accommodation, where there could possibly be risks both to the adults and the children. You know, I'd like to know what sort of vetting procedures and what sort of safeguard checks there would be put in place before you house this mixture of people together. And while I've got the mic, could I also ask if you've spoken at all with Jonathan Sutton from St Paul's Hostel and what Jonathan's opinion is of what he's proposing to do?
Yep, so the proposed client group for the accommodation, there are 6 flats and there is a doorway to flats 1 and 2, and then a separate doorway to flat and flat 2. Then there is a doorway number 2, let's call it, for flats 3 and 4 with a separate doorway in between. So how we would separate that is that in flats 1 and 2 with the 1 door would be the females, flats, or maybe the females in the middle. Haven't put that in stone, however the best the building can be used, but there would be separate doorways for each client group, and this is staffed. So I already have this existing setup. I manage services throughout the country. I already have this existing setup, and due to the staff being on site and that we are very strict with our house rules and our license agreement, it is stipulated that you know, if it was a male, it is stipulated in their license agreement that they are not to enter the other parts of the accommodation and vice versa. And this is very heavily staffed and sort of looked at. People who do go into the other accommodation are either given a warning or evicted. We do take it very seriously, so that the client groups are kept very separate. In terms of the mothers and children, this is more of maybe a woman who is pregnant and she hasn't been able to get housing adequately. It would be provision there she'd be able to have a small child, i.e. a newborn baby, a small baby with her in that accommodation, to give that leeway to move on to more appropriate accommodation. We wouldn't be looking to house families or people with sort of more than one child, or a child that would be maybe over school age, which is identical to what we do at Pierpoint House. I am the designated safeguarding lead myself for Lotus Sanctuary, and I don't envisage there being huge safeguarding issues in this way because of the way that the staff will be there. We also do an assessment and referral process with our clients. We've got a criteria of people that we won't accept at all. This includes anyone with a MAPA level offence. This includes anybody actively still using Class A substances. This includes anybody who has a sexual offence, and this includes anybody who has a child sex offence or prolific violent offences. So we will not accept anyone with any of those high risk issues in the first instance. Does that answer your question? And also, I haven't discussed this particular project with Jonathan, but I do know Jonathan and I do have a good relationship with Jonathan. And St Paul's themselves have referred people over to us at our Pierpoint House accommodation already. So we have a good relationship with them.
Barnes?
You say you've got a similar setup in Pierpoint House. Obviously, Shore Street also has homeless accommodation. So that's quite a lot already of people in need of some level of support due to bad luck or whatever. And you're adding into the mix yet another establishment of people with a range of potential needs. I worry that the 2 sets of flats for families, that could be, say, 6 women with 6 babies, might be a bit of a nightmare to live in if things don't go as well in health terms, maybe. I can see that becoming quite fraught, having so many young children in a very small space, especially as there's no outdoor play area or between the car park and the back of the accommodation where there's like a back door. It's only a very narrow walkway. Part of it's gravel, I think, so it's completely inappropriate space for families. And certainly you couldn't leave doors open because of the risk of intruders, say. So I worry that with the already quite a lot of homeless people in the neighbourhood, that particularly for the families, may not be an appropriate place to put them. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so in terms of families, it doesn't mean that every person in that accommodation would be families. It would likely be single females. I'm just stating that in 2 of the flats, we could have provision for people with children, as usually like temporary or homeless accommodation does not allow children at all. And people are restricted to living in city guest house or the like similar, which I'm not sure if you agree, but I think our accommodation will certainly be better than that. And that's the kind of client group I was talking about with that, rather than it being a permanent base for people with children. It would be that there is the option for someone who is pregnant or possibly a child who has become homeless to us, and then we would be able to accommodate children, not on a long-term basis. As I appreciate that it isn't entirely suitable, but I think it is certainly better than the alternative of a accommodation, bed and breakfast, bed sit room with people who aren't vetted and could be pedophiles, rapists, murderers, likes. Also very close to Brayley House, a lot of those are. In terms of, sorry, what else did you ask? Oh, yes. So Shaw Street, I actually used to work for Citizens Advice a while back, and I was very much part of when that went through. It wasn't stated on there that that was for homeless accommodation. I'd be interested to know if this would have had the same opposition if they had stated that it was going to be. They offer much, much less support than what we do. They don't actually offer any support whatsoever, whereas we are offering 24-hour staffing and 14 hours a day support staff on site. So I think our establishment would be much better equipped to be helping these people and to also keep any crime, any antisocial behaviour, any concerns of what our client group might bring will be alleviated immediately, whereas the Shaw Street establishment has no one on site and the not supported. And Pierpoint House, the same, has staff on site, and we have very minimal problems there. Answer your question.
Marjorie?
Thank you very much for your clear presentation and I'm just going to ask what might seem a very silly and basic question, but I'm a bit confused about who you represent. It says in our information that you're from Ewan Kelly Property.
No,
I keep talking about
sorry,
Sanctuary.
this is my colleague.
Right. Okay.
So I work for Lotus Sanctuary. I manage all of the supported accommodations in all of the Midlands, all of London, and all the way down to Newquay, over a large patch.
Sorry, forgive me if this has already been said, but what's the geographical catchment? Only, or is it county?
We found that the referrals that we receive for Pierpoint House are predominantly Worcester. We do get a lot of referrals from Wyre Forest and Whitchurch, so it'd be Worcestershire certainly, but predominantly Worcester. We are referred to daily by Worcester City Housing team. Are crying out for this.
Oh.
Chair, thank you. Forgive me
I
too.
got confused talking to me then.
Yes, sorry. But, yeah, sorry, and bear with me. 'Cause I'm not feeling too good, and it's not COVID. I have been tested many times, just to allay that concern. Yeah, obviously you're speaking today, but obviously we've got reference to property solutions. But just to be clear, with the property itself, it hasn't recently changed. Want to move from student.
Yeah, so it was recently purchased by employers, which is HSPG, and it hasn't changed hands. Lotus Sanctuary don't own it. We would be, and yeah, it's currently student accommodation, but it's largely empty. Yes.
More questions? I have two or three. Typically, what's the length of stay of your clients in this sort of accommodation?
Currently, our length of stay is averaging around 9 months for people to positively move on from our accommodation. And Lotus Sanctuary also, within the next years, will have our own cohort of affordable housing move-on options for our clients.
Somewhere in the papers, there's mention of the red line of the site. Begs the question where I assume your staff will drive to work.
Our staff at Pierpoint House currently drive to work and park within the city.
Perhaps at some point, Andrew, the red line and who owns what? Carry on while you think about that one.
And we'd be more than happy to provide our staff with parking permits for our park if that's a...
The other concern that's been expressed from within the city, I mean, clearly, we've almost got conflicting requirements, because I used to chair communities and I know the whole issue about homelessness. But this is an area that's the subject of quite a lot of economic. The real concern that change of use of that accommodation will impact in some way. Like to comment?
Yeah, I can certainly see the concerns of if it was going to be a homeless night shelter, as was portrayed incorrectly in the Worcester News. This is not what this accommodation would be. This would be heavily supported accommodation with low needs individuals. You know, your people who have had a relationship breakdown and they're keeping on their friend's sofa, your woman who's had to flee her flat because she's been abused by her partner. These are the people that we would be housing. We would not be housing your generic sort of street drinkers, your people who you see loitering outside Asda, etc. They are not our client group, and I need to be very clear on that. That is not what we are proposing here. And I feel like the publicity around this project, which was completely incorrect, has been a massive hindering factor in this planning being rejected.
I guess it begs the question, except what you say, how do you monitor that? How are we going to be assured that under extreme circumstances, you don't put those sorts of clients in accommodation?
I screen the referrals for the south half of the country myself, and I'm quite strict with who we will accept. If I ever have any queries about a referral, if a referral is very, let's say, loose on facts, I will go back to the referrer and I will look into it myself as to what is this person's history, where has this person come from, and we screen all of our clients. We also, if we aren't sure, we will meet a client first and get that face-to-face interaction before ever offering them any form of accommodation. And again, I can stress to you, we have an excluded license agreement. So if there were anybody who were to sort of slip through the net, they wouldn't be accommodated with us for much longer, or we can evict it immediately if needed.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Amos?
So just a very quick question. Are your clients generally at work or out of work?
Our clients are generally out of work. They can work, a lot of our clients do have part-time jobs, and that is something that we work with them to do. We have a Passport to Independence programme, which covers a range of modules, which is included in our conditions of offering accommodation that the clients engage in this project. And with that, we help them to move into work, employment, training. We help with budgeting, etc. Lotus also have our own range of retail shops coming up. We will have 10 units by the end of next year called Lotus Living, and that is part of our development plan of our clients can go into volunteering there, get work experience or paid work there.
Thank you. No more questions? Second? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Want to try and answer the parking issue?
Right, if we can go back to the presentation, thank you. I believe that's got the red line as first slide. Thank you. So as you can see, Councillor, that is the red line application. There is no parking within the site.
Oh, on the application, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, well, just a few observations, really. I always think in planning, and I think it's part of national planning policy framework anyway, that you can't solve one problem by creating another. That's always my view. And I was wavering on this, but then, as came out in the questions, the idea that families, however defined, will be some of the clients here. I mean, clearly this accommodation is okay for students, but I share the concern of other members about whether this type of accommodation that's being proposed is suitable for families, again, however defined, both in terms of the size of the units. Again, we come back to this question about, you know, what kind of units are they, and the layout. And I think a colleague did refer to the layout of these. So I must have some concerns about families, and, you know, whatever, you know, controls and safeguards are in place. I would be a little concerned that there will remain safeguarding issues given the composition and the layout and the size of these units. I think another issue is the location. And it often comes back to location, as we know. This is what I call define a proper city centre. And of course, the city centre is particularly sensitive to any experiences of antisocial behaviour. You know, we're trying to attract tourism and all the rest of it. And we want developers to come in and help us develop the city centre. And I think that it concerns me. And I think being practical here, I think this kind of accommodation, if it were introduced to this area, it would put off developers. And I think we need to face that head on. We can't pretend that it wouldn't or it shouldn't. And the fact is it will. And I think the final point is that I'm not sure this kind of accommodation will be problem-free. I mean, any undesirable activity, I think, will be exacerbated by its city centre location. I mean, if some of the clients are not at work, not in employment, what do they do during the day? Well, the city centre on the doorstep. I mean, this doesn't take much imagination to try and second guess what they're likely to do. And in the city centre again, you know, we're talking about lots of people, about tourism, the image of the city. So I think all in all, Mr. Chairman, this is not the right use and this is not the right location. So I would be in an unusual position, possibly unique position, of proposing the officer's recommendation for a refusal. Both of those points are combination. This is almost certainly unique.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Any other comments? Joe?
I listened to Melanie Green's presentation and I totally agree with what she says about the desperate need for accommodation for homeless people. Not rough sleepers, but homeless people, people who, for no fault of their own, suddenly find themselves homeless. And there is a real need for accommodation of this sort, but I don't think that this is the right place. I think for a number of reasons. What we're trying to create here in the Arches is a vibrant city centre, active place. And I'm all for development in the city centre when people choose to live there. So, you know, we've given planning permission for various buildings to be made into small apartments, and people choose to go and live there. They choose to buy one of those. That's the place they want to be. They know what's going on around them and they like it and they want to be there. But we're talking about people here who will be vulnerable. If they've suddenly become homeless, for whatever reason, they will be vulnerable. And we're putting them into, we're suggesting that they should be put into an area where there will be a lot of nighttime activity. Once all those arches are developed, there will be a lot of nighttime activity. That certainly wouldn't suit accommodation for young children because there would be noise. I'm not totally convinced about the idea of putting single men, single women and small family units together. I don't think that mix would work, although I've listened to what Melanie Green has said, and she says that it works in other places. But I feel a little bit uneasy about that. But the main thing is the position of it, the situation. I don't think the sort of accommodation that's being proposed here is right for that situation. If it was flats that people were going to buy, so they choose to live there, they know what it's going to be like, they want to live in the centre of a vibrant city, fair enough, but these people are going to have no choice. This is going to be where they've got to live, and I'm not sure that it's going to be right for that reason.
Thank you. Marjorie?
I just feel a little concerned about what happened at the beginning of the presentation from Sally. Sally read out a number of things from 2 documents, and there's a lot of information there, and I didn't really feel I could take it in. And I'm just wondering how important it is that we all understand exactly what was in
those documents before we make a decision. And I'm wondering if anybody else feels the same way.
Andy?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just sort of echoing to a degree what Joe's saying. I recognise that society has a duty to help those with greatest need. And Joe said no fault of their own. Well, I think I'm sure what she means is it's because there was a failure to help at an earlier stage. In many cases, the adults who find themselves in this position have faced adverse experiences, been raised in families where drug and alcohol and mental health are problems. And that's why the numbers of adults who have been in care at some time is disproportionate. So that is the challenges we face as a society. But my problem is, I find it very difficult to accept that these people in that adverse situation and that in the challenges they face don't present any level of antisocial behaviour. Because if I walk around in the evening, it just doesn't, it doesn't add up to me. I'm not saying anybody's telling untruths, but on that basis, I rather lean to what the bid is saying, what the police are saying, and what officers are saying, and think that this would create antisocial behaviour. And on top of that, I mean, there's our other speaker said it was a good idea in the wrong place. I don't get that either, really. I admit I'm not competent to speak on this, but it just seems to me that to bring children up in that environment is just almost damning them for the future. You know, that will be their adverse experiences. It just seems like I think they'd be better, more integrated into society, into smaller buildings. But I must say, I have no evidence base for that. That's a gut reaction. What I am sure of, because I think it's pretty old factual, is people who face these challenges challenge society. They create antisocial behaviour, and to say that that's not the case, I find really hard to believe. So on that basis, personally, I will go with the officer's recommendation, which we've been advised by speakers not to do, and I will go by the comments made by the bid, and I will go by the comments made by the police, and say it would be unsafe to approve this application.
Thank you, Andy. Just to pick up Marjorie's, is there anybody else who feels the need to have that additional information represented? Do you mind, Sally?
Okay, so the first was kind of a long paragraph, which should have been inserted into the comment which was provided by the Economic Development and Regeneration. And it's from the City Council. So it's from the City Council. Sorry. Okay. And this was provided to me yesterday, which is why it wasn't included in the late papers. Although the shortage of accommodation for homeless persons is acknowledged, the supply of homeless accommodation to this degree significantly risks oversupply. Furthermore, although the application cites accommodation for homeless persons, there is now a well-established pathway for rough sleepers and those who are new to rough sleeping through a variety of existing support services and accommodation providers within the city who are working closely with the City Council. This application lacks detail around the intended cohort, and the final wish to raise is around the number of one-bed units provided within a single complex, whereas the direction of travel for our council is the provision of a wide range of accommodation types to meet a variety of needs. Okay, so that's from the council. This was provided to the agent who has responded, and they responded this morning with the following statement, which I'll read out to you. Is that okay? There is not a well-established route for rust sleepers within the city. People are only entitled to help if they are not deemed intentionally homeless and have priority need. Any other persons presenting as homeless and not deemed to have a duty from the council are referred to places such as ourselves, St Paul's Hostel, CCP, etc., for external, private, non-temporary accommodation. The intended client are not rough sleepers. Rough sleepers tend to have a high level of complex support needs. Lotus houses people with low to medium support needs who may be classed as homeless, but that does not mean that they are rough sleeping. The vast majority of people who are homeless are not rough sleepers. They are classed as the hidden homeless. These people are sofa surfing, living in domestic abuse situations, living in cramped one-bedroom B&B accommodation with their young children. The intended cohort for the building would be 2 of the flats for single women, 2 for single males, and 2 for mothers and small children, not rough sleepers. This is not a permanent accommodation. This is for up to 2 years whilst we work with clients to be able to maintain a tenancy of their own. We operate on an excluded license arrangement basis, which affords us the ability to evict a client immediately if there should be any issues with their conduct whilst accommodated with us. Sorry, that was a hard sentence to say.
Content, Marjorie?
Yes, I am. That makes me more inclined to, I feel reassured about what they're trying to do. I do still have a concern that I haven't mentioned so far about the layout, because it looks like each individual has quite a small bedroom, and then they share the living space with a number of other people who they aren't necessarily going to know and aren't necessarily going to get on with. And I think accommodation that's got, more private space for each person or each mother and baby will be preferable. But at the same time, I'm aware that there really is a need for this kind of accommodation for people who aren't rough sleeping or classified by the council as in desperate need of help, but nevertheless, they don't have a proper home. So at the moment, that's where I am.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's a really difficult, what client group are we dealing with? And there's a perception at one end of the extreme that says this is going to be problematic, and at another, as presented by the applicant, that it won't be a problem. And I think that's quite a difficult judgment for us to make, particularly in my view, given that I assume this building was originally designed for student accommodation rather than, single, homeless, whatever. So I think there's a bit of a conflict there in terms of, is it the appropriate environment for that client group? Whereas for students who are used to mucking in with their mates and, forming relationships within the building, I can see it working, but I'm not sure it works when those are individual clients who have necessarily no connection with the rest of the occupants of the building.
I'm still confused. The first statement that was just read out by Sally, who made that statement is what I want to know. And secondly, I don't understand why that came to us so late from someone who thinks this is rough sleepers. I don't quite understand where this comment has come from and who's made it. Could you explain it?
There was a comment that was provided. It came in partly on behalf of the Economic and Regeneration team, and it was signed by Shane and Lloyd Griffiths, who's the Director of Homes and Communities. But I'm not sure how, I haven't got to the bottom of it yet, but when it was provided to me, it omitted the paragraph which was from Lloyd Griffiths. And so that was what was provided me yesterday, which is what I forwarded on to the agent, which is what I read out just now.
If I just may, it came up at briefing and there was no comment from housing. And I asked the question that they must have an opinion, and I suspect that's what prompted that paragraph.
My confusion is why the opinion talks about rough sleepers, because I didn't get that opinion when I read about this case. And I'm wondering why at the last minute someone's telling us that it might be rough sleepers, almost at the 11th hour, and it's been rebutted by the speaker. I don't get why this appears at the last minute with someone thinking it's rough sleepers, because that wasn't my interpretation when I looked at this paperwork.
I don't know, but it is clear that it isn't rough sleepers. It is people who are unintentionally homeless. They're not coming off the streets, but they're in desperate need. And sitting on communities, that was well recognised as a problem, which is why we built we converted accommodation to take those sorts of applicants. But clearly there is never enough of it.
Chair, thank you. Just quickly, thinking back to recent planning meetings that we've been to, we've refused a lot of property because we think it's not suitable for families, because there isn't an amenity in the mix and the location. And I think our thoughts around are very consistent with those previous meetings. That's all. Thank you.
So I think we had a proposal to refuse from Councillor Amos.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on the grounds in the report.
Thank you. On balance, I think it could be a good solution for the large number of the hidden homeless. I wouldn't want it to be for families, small families, and I would want 24-hour security in the building, but otherwise I would be prepared to go for the application rather than the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Have we got anybody to support Councillor Amos in his refusal? Jenny? And Joe? Thank you. So we have a proposal to refuse and a seconder. We'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is refusal for the grounds set out in the report. All those for? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstentions? 1. So the application is refused, Chair.
We now have the interesting prospect of multiple applications for roundabout advertising. So what we're going to do is take a break. Pat and I have delivered some, or will deliver some refreshments, which we'll have now, and then we'll come back and hopefully glide our way through multiple roundabouts. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. We now move on to agenda items 10 to 32, but they're not going to be taken in that order. You should have a late paper that starts with new applications, 22, 32, 35, and so on. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Councillor. And here we go. This is a series of applications submitted by the City Council for non-illuminated adverts on roundabouts across the city. So we often tell you that development planning permission must be made in accordance with the development plan unless material circumstances tell you otherwise. For advert applications, that flips. The MPPF becomes the determining factor, along with the advert regulations. And when we consider advert applications, we consider two aspects. One of those is public amenity, how it looks in the street scene and those aspects, and highway safety. So in terms of the applications before you, some of these are replacement of existing adverts with slightly larger or adverts. You can see there on the bottom right of the slide the details of the advert. They are in effect showing us what the size is, the fact that they will be non-illuminated. In the case of this one, it is 3 freestanding adverts on each approach, in effect, roughly. And you can see on the top right where the signs will be just located, signified by a little, by a bar. And then on bottom left, you can see the approaches to the roundabouts and what the current roundabout looks like. So this is agenda item 22. These are the ones where we don't have adverts. So if we go to the next slide, please. Marvellous, the system is working. This is agenda item 32. And as you can see, this one is for 2 freestanding. Even with my glasses on, I can't read the text on the TV across the room. So this is 2 freestanding adverts. Again, you can see the bar where the little bars on within the red line as to where the advert's going. Again, same size of adverts. And again, you can see pictures of the roundabouts next. And then in the next slide, please. And this is agenda item 35. And again, 21/01044. And this is 2 freestanding adverts. Again, same advert, non-illuminated details, and again, pictures of the advert and where those 2 signs will be located. So those are the roundabouts where we don't have adverts at the moment, and where we haven't had any objections or issues raised as a result of the public consultation. It should be added that the reason you have in your update papers a number of kind of updates is it's basically the public consultation ended between us publishing the report and today, in effect. But that is the ones I understand we're going to now look at.
Oh, through you, Chair, just wanted to clarify, members, that what we're proposing to do is have this short presentation in the blocks that are shown in the late paper. Members will then be invited now to raise any issues they want to. And if members are happy that they don't wish to change the recommendation on the ones in that particular block, we will take their vote for that particular block as one vote. So unless members want to remove something called, which we would of course deal with separately, there'll be 4 votes in total on these adverts today. So I'll just pass it back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So any questions, comments on Trotts Hill Lane and Plantation Drive?
Sorry. newfangled technology. I can't quite keep up with it. I lost what I'm going to say now. I'd like to raise a point on agenda item number 15, if I may, please. But I'm happy with Plantation Drive anyway. Thank you.
Okay. The alternative.
The alternative, the superior version. Provisional, yeah. Mr. Chairman, this may not, and I don't think it is a planning matter, but just on a point of interest then, what we're discussing is the erection of signs on roundabouts, fine. Who actually oversees the content of those signs? Now, I'm not advocating censorship or anything of the kind. All I'm saying is there may be rare occasions, you know, because these are involuntary. In other words, people have got to see them. They can't not see them. It's not a public choice, they have. So there may, on the odd occasion, rare occasion, be something which is inappropriate, let's put it that way. So who actually would just keep an eye on that? As I say, but I'm not advocating, you know, somebody coming on and say, you can't have this, you can't have that, because that's pointless, a waste of officers' time.
So thank you for that. Good question. Who does manage the content? These plaques, blank plaques put up.
So there's a guidance and a legislation that I've been referred to that's a license agreement with the City Council that would be required. And I think it also goes through highways licenses as well.
Chair, if you'd like me to come in. Yeah, we will be consulted. We're consulted on the font and everything, but we're not necessarily the ones that determine actually what the sign says. I think that would be, it's my understanding that that's actually the City Council. But in terms of the size of the sign and the actual font, that is ourselves.
So it's the City Council that control what the content is.
On that then, Mr. Chairman, just very briefly, I don't want to detain the committee, but what's the mechanism or process? Somebody applies and they say, you know, the sign is there. So they apply for something. Presumably somebody in the City Council sees what it is. Unless there's something very exceptional, that's it. But there might be the odd occasion. In other words, what I'm trying to get at is who makes a decision in those rare cases where something might not be suitable on the highway because people have to see it rather than, you know, they haven't got a choice not to see it.
It's almost an editorial decision, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
pictures, whatever.
Yes, I mean, it's slightly different in the sense, you know, with a newspaper, people can either buy it or not buy it. It's up to them. They don't have to see it if they don't want it. But because it's on the roundabout, people don't have any choice. They're going to have to see it because, you know, they're on the public highway. So, and I haven't got any particular case in mind. I'm just trying to ascertain as to what happens if, because that sign obviously will simply go up. Then people complain, and then it's a bit pointless, isn't it?
Can we take that away and add something to the minutes or put a note round once we know who's the editor, if you like?
I must emphasize, I'm not advocating somebody sits down and starts banning things. I'm not advocating that at all.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit concerned about the siting of these advertising boards on the roundabout. Has any form of risk assessment been done as to their placing? And secondly, what is the maintenance program for them? Because obviously birds such as seagulls will sit on them and excrete, and they'll make them quite unsightly and a bit of an eyesore over time. So is there any maintenance program for cleaning them and making them sightly once they become soiled? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I can come in with part of that. We have been consulted, and all of the ones you're looking at today, we've been consulted on the location of those signs and the size of those signs. And you will see that we have recommended, as we go through the officer's report, we have recommended refusal to a few of the sites because we don't believe those locations are suitable for the erection of the sign. So we have assessed them. Where we haven't objected, we've determined that the location is suitable and safe for them. In terms of the maintenance, I'm not entirely sure that I can answer that, but a license will be issued. So it will be the responsibility
of whoever has requested the sign and whoever the license is issued to for the maintenance of them. I would assume that includes cleaning, but I'll be honest, I don't know.
I can probably answer that one for you. Is that it's a part of the advert regulations, so you have to keep signs clean and tidy and well maintained. So that's part of the advert regulations. So if it's not maintained, then they're in breach of the advert regulations, and that would be, the advert can then be discontinued and removed.
Right, thank you for that. Could I have a follow-on point, please, Chair? Thank you. As we, as Hanchett said, that some haven't been recommended for approval. May I draw your attention to item 15 on the agenda, if that's appropriate now, Chair. The roundabout at Malvern Road, Canada Way, and Bromwich Road. Now, I suggest that this be refused, although it has been recommended for acceptance. I've grave reservations about this roundabout. Bromwich Road, Malvern Road, and Canada Way are all very fast approach roads. They're straight, they head directly onto the roundabout, and people rarely stop. It's a 30-mile-an-hour limit on all of those roads, but that seems to be academic as far as most motorists are concerned. I think due to the nature of those approach roads and the speed of the approach, and also that hasn't been factored into this, is the exit from the Marks and Spencer petrol station. That effectively forms a fourth exit onto the roundabout, and it's sandwiched between Malvern Road and Bromwich Road. And it's a very popular garage. It's a Marks and Spencer sub-store with a petrol station attached to it, for those who don't know it. I know for a fact there have been several knocks on that roundabout with cars colliding with each other. And also a few years ago, there was an unpleasant incident when a cyclist was knocked over and very seriously injured. I think any distraction on that roundabout, just for a moment distraction, you've got to be looking 3 or 4 ways on that roundabout to actually see. If your focus is on an advertising sign just for a second, because of the speed and the nature and the geography of the roundabout, I think it's a hazard. And I would recommend that one be withdrawn and the application refused. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. We'll take that when we get on to that section, if that's okay with you. But thank you for your comments. Pat.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I can be of help to Councillor Alan Amos over there. I did have a specific one in mind when I was thinking about this, and that was the Sin City thing, which you will probably remember. I think you may have been on the planning committee at the time. And Sin City sign on a roundabout didn't actually refer to the morals of people in the city. It actually was about a trendy nightclub, I believe. But nevertheless, it didn't really reflect the image that most of the council wanted to have for the city. So some editorial process actually probably is needed somewhere.
Marjorie?
I think it would be better if we didn't have any hoardings on any roundabouts. And anyway, I think there's an inherent contradiction in the situation. In other words, if the transport experts are saying it's safe, then it means it's not a distraction. And if it's not a distraction, then it's not doing its job as advertising. I'd like to mention 2 other points. One is that roundabouts are very dangerous places for cyclists, as Councillor Bill Amos just mentioned. I'm just concerned that that advertisements might distract motorists and lead to more accidents involving cyclists. And then my other point is that there's been a move towards using roundabouts as planting sites for wildflowers and improving diversity. And I'm just thinking maybe there's a conflict there in terms of if the advert's going to be seen, then the area around them needs to be kept shorn. So I'm really against the lot.
Thank you for that.
I just want to follow up what Councillor Bissett just said. I think the use of the roundabouts as these little wildflower meadows, that's a fantastic idea, and there should be more of them. And I'm quite happy to support all of these if these wildflower meadows can be encouraged on the bigger roundabouts in the middle, behind the adverts. So you've got the best of both worlds.
Fair comment. Have we got a roundabout view of the world where these are actually situated? Are they close to the perimeter?
Yes, Councillor. So, can we go back to the presentation, please, Margaret? So you can, it's quite difficult on that, but you can see around on the, that they're at the edges, the roundabouts. They are, as I said, they are on stilts, so they would be 300 millimetres above so they would be above the any growth or that would be on the roundabout. So yeah, so they're not at low level. So but yeah, there's plenty of room around and behind to put landscaping or elements on those kind of lines, but that would be a matter for the City Council and its jurisdiction as landowner. Yeah.
Joe?
Can I just ask, we get an income for these advertising posts, don't we?
Yes, I believe we do.
I believe we do, yeah.
But don't ask me how much.
So if I was a member of the Income Generation Committee, which I'm not, but I am a place in economic development, which is sort of economic development trying to boost the coffers of the council because we have far too little money to do all the things that we need to do. I would be thinking this is a source of income for the council, and were we not to have this, where would this income come from otherwise? Is that a fair sort of summing up?
I think it's very fair. Whether it's a substantial amount, I doubt, but there you go. But yes, every little helps, as they say. Jenny?
Well, what I've seen on roundabouts so far doesn't actually seem to add anything to our city. And there may be a marginal benefit from the income, but I tend to be with Marjorie that it's actually clutter rather than doing very much. I'd much prefer to see some kind of positive statement where we do green up our roundabouts and other spaces, rather than yet another piece of placard for people to be distracted by.
Thank you for that. Andy?
First, a technical thing. On 2101017, the site address is given as Trotsell Lane Way. Well, that doesn't exist. There's Trotsell Lane and there's Trotsell Way, but not the two. So I guess well, I'm sure it means Trotsell Way. And on the business about, I don't know ever of any evidence of drivers being distracted by these and causing any accident. It may have happened, but I do remember that the idea was introduced by councillors, and in particular, somebody you know very well from your area, Roger Knight, and Labour Group put this forward as an income generation idea. And if it helps to keep the council taxpayers' bill down, I support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to come back very quickly on a comment from Councillor Cleary. Yes, of course, wildflower meadows, that's excellent. It's just we do need to be careful because we do need to ensure that any growth on roundabouts is kept to a minimum, obviously, because we need to ensure that intervisibility for drivers is there. So although we are absolutely not against that sort of planting, it does need to be very carefully considered.
In that case, can we look at something in the middle, whether it's flowers, plants, something that's aesthetically pleasing rather than just grass with these signs? Doesn't have to be a wildflower meadow 3 foot tall, but something that looks nice.
I believe that's a city issue, not a county issue. So I guess it needs to go to environmental committee and say, well, you know, over time, should we be developing the islands as an asset rather than just a functional item? Yeah. I mean, I used to live in St. Peter's and the one nearest to me was covered with nice shrubs and all sorts of stuff. But it's still got advertising in between it and it seemed to work. Can we return therefore to 22, 32 and 35, which is the slideshow you saw? Have we got somebody voting for approval? Seconder, please. We have a proposal and a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. So the proposal is for, in respect of items 22, 32 and 35 for approval in accordance with the officer's recommendation and the conditions set out in each report. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Motion's carried, Chair. Thank you.
Good.
Right. So can we have the presentation back up, please, Margaret? Thank you. So these are adverts we are on agenda 10. That's good. So these are adverts that have existing signs on them, and you can see in the bottom right-hand photograph the existing adverts that's going to be replaced, and these are replaced. These are items. So
19, which is
19. I'm sorry, Councillor. Sorry to confuse you. Yeah, we're going to do the existing adverts, renewal adverts for approval now. So the presentation is slightly different. So we'll do item 19 after this chunk. If that's okay, Councillor. Sorry. So yeah, this is Newton Road and Charles Hastings Way. 2 freestanding adverts on this one. Again, details are the same. Adverts of the replacement of existing adverts as shown. Can we go to the next slide, please? Again, this is Parsonage Way, item agenda 11. And there are 4 being proposed on this one. Again, you can see the existing sign in the bottom right-hand corner. Next slide, please. Agenda item 12. This is the 2 adverts being proposed on this one. Next slide. Agenda item 13. There are 4 adverts being proposed on this one. 14. Again, another 4 adverts on this one. Again, you can see the existing advert there in the bottom right-hand photograph. Item 15, I know this is one Councillor Amos has taken a particular interest in. And you can see again here the photos, and you can see again the service station and those issues. But that's proposing 2 adverts.
stop there then, have a discussion.
Yes.
Because if we're going to refuse this one, we need to do it at this point, I guess.
So Councillor Amos has raised the issue of obviously highway safety. I'll leave the slide up if that's for the discussion.
Alternative, maybe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think Councillor Billam has raised a very important point, and I'll happily second his proposal to refuse this one. And the reasons are just very practical ones. It's a 4-arm roundabout. At one end, you've got Malvern Road coming in, and that's one of the 2 main entrances into the city from the west. So it is always busy, and it's a straight stretch. So motorists obviously speed up to make up for lost time, having got off the bypass. The other side of that is Malvern Road, as Councillor Amos said. That is straight, and again, we have had speeding problems down there. That has been looked at, and we've got some BAS speed signs up because motorists do speed up, but again, it's a straight stretch. One of the other arms is Bromwich Road. That is very straight, and motorists certainly speed down there, and I can attest to that because that's the road I use, because it's although it's busy, it's open and it's straight. And also you've got a residential street coming off there, Canada Way as well. In addition, there would have been a 5th arm, but that's been blocked off. So obviously you've got more traffic that funneled into 4 as opposed to 5 entrances. And you do have the distraction, which is this is the important point, of that petrol station there. It is quite extraordinary because it's actually on the roundabout, this petrol station, and to get in and out of it, you can get in and out of it either from Bromwich Road or from Malvern Road. Now that is very difficult because you're interrupting 2 lanes of fast traffic who also are queuing to get onto the roundabout. And as Councillor Bill Amos said, a motorist has been at a serious accident. And there is no pedestrian crossing there. I'm actually looking to address that, but at the moment there is no pedestrian crossing. So if you want to get across any of these arms, you just have to run. And I have seen mums with prams running to get across the Malvern Road end, and that is not acceptable. So we are looking at doing some kind of pedestrian crossing there. So the idea that you could have anything that could distract. And the final point, Mr. Chairman, is I can confirm that I have on a number of occasions asked highways to cut back some of the foliage on that. And the reason it's sensitive is, but in order, I don't want to bore the committee, but in order to get out of Bromwich Road in particular, which is the biggest problem, you have to pull right out because you cannot see around the petrol station to see what's coming out of Malvern Road. You can't, so you have to pull right out. So any impediment to the site on that is very dangerous, frankly. I mean, when I use it myself, I use it very frequently, I pull right out because I can't see what's coming around. If you've then got an impediment on the roundabout, and it's not a big roundabout, it's a tight, small roundabout. So my strong advice on practical and safety grounds is to refuse that one for the reasons I've given.
We have a highways view.
Thank you, Chair. That is not one of the 4 roundabouts that we have recommended for one of the roundabout advertisements that we have recommended for refusal. Our safety audit team have reviewed all of the locations. They have determined this one to be acceptable. Clearly, if members have concern, then obviously you are, well within your rights to refuse it.
You, Andy.
Always lean on the knowledge of the local member, Chair, but looking on Google Maps, I see there's already a sign for, well, there's one sign that says this sponsor this site, call whatever number. There's another one for another formal one for another firm, and there's an informal one at this stage which says IK Open Indian Kitchen, eat in, take away, fully licensed, book now. Now, and then on top of that, there are 5 keep left signs. I can't see, I've lost what the other one was for, but I'd ask the highways officer, have these caused any problems in the past?
if I could check. No, these haven't, to the best of our knowledge, these haven't caused an issue, which is why these are under the section. There's about 19 of them, I believe, that all are renewals. So yes, these already have signs at them, that the 19 that we're discussing now. And as far as we're aware, any of the incidents that have occurred at Roundabout are not associated with these signs. But then of the 4 that we are recommending, or the 3 existing ones that we're recommending refusal, we're not aware that any of the incidents that have happened at those roundabouts are associated with the advertisement signs, but we still have a concern with those and have recommended refusal to them.
Councillor Bill Amos.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's a difference, or we ought to distinguish between an advert that's informative and one that's instructional. I think if you have an advert that's instructional, telling people what to do or where to go or how to shop, then it takes time to read. And you're passing through there at 30, 40 miles an hour. If it's merely an advertising sign saying Joe Blogs, fine, you can also almost subliminally read that and carry on. But if you're distracted for more than a split second, that's the difference between hitting a cyclist, knocking a child over, or running into somebody else's car. And I think now we really are overburdened with street and road signage. And to add more is simply compromising the focus of road safety. I think if we are going to have these adverts, and I suppose we are going to have them, I personally object to them quite strongly, and I shall vote against them accordingly. They are a hazard by virtue of their distraction. I accept that they're a money-raising tool for the city, so I accept that. But in essence, they should be as simple and as plain as possible if we have to have them, so that they don't distract the driver to any greater extent than is absolutely necessary. These, if they're instructional, then they've got to be read, and that's got to be digested. And I think that is a serious compromise of road safety, and I don't think we should be allowing that sort of advert. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have a proposer and a seconder, unless...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in seconding that, I would just add that I'm grateful for Councillor Roberts telling us there's a sign there for an Indian restaurant, and I bet you that hasn't got permission. So that is proving the point that, you know, we can approve anything. The question is it's enforcement of it, and it is not appropriate for somebody to come along, put a sign up, leave it up, and get away for it as long as they can until somebody complains, and then somebody takes it down again, and then another one goes up. So, you know, while I'm not against signs on roundabouts as such, I think there is an inherent problem that we've got to face, that people will abuse it, and that the level of enforcement is not exactly swift if it exists at all. And I suspect it hardly does exist. And again, you know, on this committee, I've always listened to the local member. If they have concerns, then I would have concerns. And I think just to say, well, we haven't had accidents or something, you know, you've got to bear in mind that the majority of people, for example, using this one, are people, because it's on one of the routes into the city, going in and out of the city, they're not residents. You know, we've got to have a consultation. I mean, they haven't been consulted. They're going in and out of the city. So if they have a prang or a knock or whatever, they're not going to report it. We won't know about it. We can only go by members' judgment and assessment. And if I've been asked frequently to get highways to cut the foliage back because it's affecting sight lines, but we're going to allow signs up as well, it just really is nonsense. And I don't know why we would want to, you know, if there's an element of concrete danger, why are we insisting that somebody's got to put a sign up advertising an Indian restaurant? Because that's not going to be taken down, is it? Let's be honest.
Thank you for that. We have a proposer and a seconder for refusal of agenda item 15, Malvern Road and Canada Way.
I'll support refusal, but please don't tell me I've got to have the thanks to the NHS signs taken down on the roundabout going into Charles Hastings Way.
I don't know whether to believe those, Andy.
fair comment.
So thank you, Chair, through you. First and foremost, I'll investigate the Indian kitchen sign and let you know what's going on. In terms of, there is a difference obviously between directional signs and the adverts that are being proposed now. So directional signs are deemed consent, what we call this, so they don't, and obviously those kind of things. Now, you have been mentioning a number of matters, and I've been listening to the discussion. So the wording I've got for this application is: the proposed signs, by reason of the awkward orientation of the roundabout and associated neighbouring land uses, will cause a danger to highway safety, contrary to the paragraph 111 of the MPPF. That's. That's exactly what we're saying.
Thank you, Chair. So in accordance with the new procedure that we've adopted, so it's contrary to officer recommendation, you're resolving to refuse planning permission on the grounds stated and delegating authority to the corporate director of planning and governance, subject to consultation with the chair and vice chair to confirm the final wording and issue the decision notice. All those in favour of refusal on that ground? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those against? 1. And any abstentions? 1. Thank you, Chair. That one is refused. That's...
Thank you.
I'll continue now with the continuing list. So next, if we go to the next slide, please, agenda item 16. Again, that is 3 signs. It's the City Wall, A38 City Wall, St Martin's Gate. Again, you can see the signs, again, bottom right in particular, I can see. Again, next slide, please. So this is agenda item 17. Again, 4 signs being proposed here. Again, you can see the existing signs in location. Next slide, please. Agenda item 18, Blackpole Road and Windermere Drive. Again, 4 signs being proposed here. Sorry.
Can I just comment there, please? Because it does say under 2.2 that this application site is in St Peter's Parish Ward, but certainly isn't in St Peter's Parish Ward. It's in Warndon. So can I assume that it's only that paragraph which has made a mistake, and that that actual roundabout was inspected, and that the content of the report there does refer to the Windermere Drive Blackpool Road roundabout and not something in St Peter's?
Yeah, apologies for that, Councillor, for that error. Yeah, that is clearly a typographical error. Apologies for the, but thank you for highlighting that. Moving up to agenda item 18. Sorry, next slide, please. This is agenda item 20. Again, London Road and Spetchley Road. There are 3 adverts being proposed here. Next one, please. Agenda item 21. Another 3 on this one. Again, pictures of the adverts, or pictures of the roundabouts and everything else.
Can I ask, Chair, on that one? There were no comments from the Parish Council on the dugout.
There is a late paper, Councillor, so we have received comments that was circulated. When was it circulated? So we have received several comments as part of the update, because, as I say at the beginning, that in order to meet the statutory deadlines, we've been the reports were published before the end of the consultation period, but that consultation period's now ended. Apologies, I haven't got a copy of the late paper in front of me. Thank you. So, let's have a look. Yeah. Yeah, so the parish council notes the roundabouts, expects the sponsors to be maintained to a high standard. The comments.
So they haven't objected.
Apologies, I missed that paper, but thanks very much.
Okay, so I got a hand up.
Marjorie.
Thank you. When I was looking at these before the meeting, I classified some of these as new, but they're down as being renewal applications.
Yep.
So agenda item 20, London Road, Spetchley Road, there's nowhere does it say that this is a renewal, unless I'm missing it.
Correct, Councillor.
And that's the same for 21.
Yeah, so these are replacement signs. So we don't say renewal in the development description because these are new signs. The old signs.
Sorry.
But the old signs will be taken away, and it will be the display of these signs is what you are considering now.
Signs there before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill.
Chair, may I raise an objection to agenda item number 16, please? The roundabout at the A38 City Ward Road and St Martin's Gate. Sorry. Oh, beg your pardon. I object to that because it's in constant use all day and till late in the evening. Is a constant and very heavy traffic use of that roundabout, and the roundabout is purely a medium to direct traffic on its way in the appropriate lane. Now, if you know that roundabout, the density is such that you have to find your lane pretty quickly and then go around it. If there's any distraction on that roundabout, you're going to focus on that. I think that is one roundabout in particular that needs to be kept absolutely clear and priority given to motorists finding the correct lane and going. Again, it's quite fast with the City Ward Road. I don't think we need any distraction on that roundabout at all due to the very heavy density of traffic that constantly uses that roundabout. Thank you, Chair.
I hear your comment, but I would guess from a highways perspective, there's no data to suggest that this is a problem.
Chairman, absolutely, and I can only say what I said just now, in that we've assessed all of the locations, and we have not determined that this one is unsuitable for renewal of the advertising. Sorry.
To be blunt, if I was an advertiser, I'd pick that because the traffic moves so slowly around that island. What else are you going to look at? The relative term, is it, Councillor Amos? Have a proposal and a seconder.
To come with some wording. If we could just have a second to put the wording of the reason for refusal. Just bear with us.
So it's agenda item. This is agenda item 16, Councillor. So again, it would be the proposed signs by reason of the heavy trafficked nature of the roundabouts. And I'm struggling because I appreciate the things you were saying, Councillor, but I'm just struggling to put that into a kind of words. But I'd say something on the lines of heavy traffic nature and yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure, as I say, that would be, I'm trying to think of a reason, Councillor, and I'm struggling in terms of heavy traffic would be the only kind of mechanism, because it seems there's no awkward aspect in terms of orientation that I could say to you would be sustainable as a reason for refusal.
Sorry, I'm just concerned with using just heavy traffic, because if that's the issue, then you're going to have to refuse every single one of them because they've all got heavy traffic. Sorry to be awkward.
We carry on, Councillor. I'll give it some thought, and hopefully by the end I'll come up with some.
What's the next meeting?
Yeah, I propose approval, Chair. Propose approval.
Just to clarify, because we've already got a motion for refusal, and which has been seconded. In order for you to put your proposal forward, we would need Councillor Bill-Amos to withdraw his first. But if members want to continue through the others, and then we'll come back to agenda item 16 with the ground, we can then decide whether or not Councillor Amos would like to withdraw. If he doesn't, then we would go for a vote on the ground that is put forward by Councillor Bill-Amos.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgina. I shan't be withdrawing the proposal. No, I will object to it, and I maintain my objection, and I propose that it be withdrawn. If Councillor Amos is prepared to second that, then I'd like to proceed with that. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Recommendation. The proposal is for refusal of agenda item 16 on the grounds of heavy traffic. It would be delegated to the Chair and Vice Chair, delegated to the Director of Planning and Governance in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair to agree the precise wording and issue the decision notice. If I could ask for all those in favour of refusal. That's 4. And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Therefore, the vote to refuse that item has been lost. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah. So as the motion's been denied, Councillor, I'm at agenda item 21. If I, Chair, through you, if I suggest we go for item agenda 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 20 and 21, because I've already presented those, and we run the votes. That's okay. I'm happy to propose.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the approval of the items stated 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 20 and 21, with the subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 4. The motion is carried. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so can we get to agenda item 23? With that, right, this is St Peter's Drive. There are 4 proposed signs on this one. Next slide, please. Agenda item 24, again, bottom left, this time you can see the existing sign and obviously the photos of the roundabouts. Again, there are 4 being proposed on this one. Next slide, please. This is agenda item 27. And again, you can see the roundabout there on the photographs. There are 4 being proposed on on this roundabout. Next slide, please. This is agenda item 29. And there are two adverts being proposed on that one. Agenda item 30. Again, you can see there are two adverts being proposed on that one. Again, existing signs shown. Agenda item 31. We've got 4 adverts on that one. Next slide, please. This is agenda item 33. Again, 2 on that one. And finally, in this chunk, the agenda item 34, Middle Hollow Drive and Wood Green Road. Again, 2 signs being proposed on that one. That's it in terms of signs where we're getting rid of existing ones.
Any questions or queries on that set? No? Looking for a proposer? And a seconder? Got that?
Thank you, Chair. So this is items 23, 24, 27, 29, 30, 31, 33 and 34. The proposal is for approval in accordance with the officer's recommendation, subject to the conditions set out in the report. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4. All those against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstentions? Oh, I apologise. Could I take that again? Because I only got 10 in total there. Could we take all those 4, please?
4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 for, and it's 3 abstentions. 3 against. Thank you. That's been approved, Chair. Thank you.
Back to the presentation, please. Not long to go now, councillors. So next slide. So these are the roundabouts with highway objections in terms of the late paper. So we start with and again, you start to see the difference in the roundabouts, even just from the nature of the plan and also the photographs. They're much wider with high-speed approaches. So this is agenda item 19, and there are 4 adverts being proposed in accordance with the update paper. We've had a response from our County Council Highways recommending refusal, and Councillor Lawrence also suggesting a refusal. In light of the Highways comments and also noting obviously Councillor Lawrence's comments, we've come up with a reason for refusal there based on the highway safety, that the introduction of signage on the roundabout, which has high-speed approaches, would cause unnecessary distraction to drivers. The highway safety implications of the proposed signage are considered unacceptable and contrary to paragraph 111 of the MPPF.
Happy to propose refusal.
In proposing it, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important we speed up because Karen Hadgett's got a hair appointment. Oh, it's right, she's moved it. Sorry, we can take our time.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Seconded. Councillor Ditter.
Thank you, Chair. So this is agenda item 19. The recommendation is, the proposal is for refusal for the reasons set out in the late paper. All those in favour of refusal, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That one's unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And last but not least.
And the last 3 are agenda items 25, which is, again, we are recommending refusal. Again, this is 34. And again, that is the introduction of signage on the roundabout, which has high-speed approaches, would cause unnecessary distraction to drivers, and the implications are unacceptable and contrary to paragraph 111 of the MPPF. Next slide, again, 1035. Again, this is Swinesherd Road. Again, objections from highways colleagues, and we also note that the parish council have raised comments saying that if approved, the parish council expects sponsored roundabouts to be maintained to a high standard. However, again, we're recommending refusal on this one for the same reason as previously indicated. And finally, item 28, which is 1037, and apologies, I don't appear to have put a recommendation for refusal in your update paper, but it would be the same reason for refusal as on agenda item 26 before it. And again, the comments of highways, we would be recommending refusal on highways grounds for the reason previously set out. This is again with 4 adverts being proposed, and that completes, I believe, all the advert presentations.
Questions? No. Recommendation for refusal? And seconded by Councillor Ditter, as before.
Thank you, Chair. So this is for refusal of items 25, 26 and 28 for the reasons set out in the late paper. All those in favour? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the business. The good news is you can now go home and have a happy Christmas. The bad news is there's the potential for an all-day meeting in January because we're still catching up with the backlog of applications. Sorry? No, you would have got the cake and the, anyway, wouldn't they? Margaret, have we got a date yet? 27th of January.